mum has a podcast with my mate, and they've got like 3 cameras set up, and because they just do it all in person.
Wait, what's your mom's podcast? That's amazing.
I think it's called Conversation with Angie and Mike.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's like one of my best mates and my mum. But my mum's a therapist, and they own a drug and alcohol rehab. And then
wow,
my mate's a IT geek dude that's like very intelligent, but also is a property developer.
Just the fact, without even knowing that much about you or your family, just the fact that your mom is doing a podcast with one of your best friends, that tells me that you must have a fairly close relationship to like your childhood and your family and the people you knew back then.
Yeah, I'm really lucky. I had like a very good childhood. Yeah, I'm extremely fortunate over a lot of people, compared to a lot of people. And just on a relationship basis, like we grew up from the ages of like when I was born till 7, my parents were like poor as fuck. And I might get the years wrong. But yeah, they were like extremely poor, but hustled hard, really hard. But no matter how little money they had, we always had food on the table, always had the best time. Like instead of going on holidays like abroad or doing what a lot of people do nowadays, getting on planes and stuff like that, we would literally just go camping and we'd have the best time as a family. Like I've got an older brother and an older sister. And just like emotionally, my parents always were like, it was a very solid childhood emotionally.
Right.
I think that's massively helped me over the years. And then I think, from 7 upwards, my parents became more successful because they worked very hard and kind of grew into their careers and did well for themselves. And yeah, like they've always been a part of my life. And I'm super lucky that I have that with them. Like even growing up, like I used to play rugby and my dad would coach. I grew up with my dad playing rugby,
right,
as well. So I grew up playing rugby, and he would coach my team since I was 3 years old until I was about 17.
Oh wow!
And when the team went their separate ways, and like every school game, like one of my parents was there. Everything that I've done throughout my life, my parents have always supported me. And I think I've been so fortunate. Like, yeah, I'm so lucky for that. So lucky.
Yeah, man. I mean, it's one of those things. My parents, it's not exactly a similar story, but I feel similarly in that I always was happy and cared for, and I knew that they loved me and I knew that they supported me in anything I wanted to do, all of those things. Again, very lucky. And I don't know if you feel the same way with your podcast after you talk to enough people who do what we do. But for me, that's one thing doing mine that I it put it into perspective for me that obviously not everyone has that experience, but it made me realize how big of an advantage that was for me, as far as just knowing that no matter what happened, if I totally fucked up, if I totally failed, no matter what happened, like they were there for me. There were people who would support me and take care of me, no matter how bad it got or, any of that. And it's not even something I consciously thought. It was just, it's just knowledge that you have from that childhood. And then you talk to enough people and I'm like, oh yeah, if I didn't have that, this probably would have been much harder, much more daunting.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that. I think for me because my mum, my whole life has always worked in mental health or in some sort of therapy or addiction kind of services. Some of my youngest memories were going to like a rehab my mum worked at. and like I'd go in with her, and it would be like a bit of a family affair. Like, so there's a thing called a carnival in the UK that happens at the beginning of November, and it's just like a load of floats with lights on and people dancing on them, and it tours through, like, it's mostly in the southwest where I'm from, but it's like they tour through the southwest, different cities each night, and we would, where the rehab was, we would go, and like everyone from the rehab would go, and like there's some of my youngest memories. And then my parents, I think they started their own rehab at, I think I was 15 at the time.
Okay.
Maybe actually a bit younger, but 15. But I remember going with dad and like helping him like fix stuff up and kind of just being general dog's body, just helping them out. And yeah, like, I think growing up around people that are in addiction and that have struggled with addiction has always made me realize how lucky I have been with having the family that I have around me and the friends that I have around me, because I'm not a doctor, and this might be untrue, so I'm happy to be wrong, but I would say like 95% of people that are in addiction have had some sort of trauma in their life. And majority of that comes from childhood. And I think it's a huge thing that we don't really talk about in life, that people don't have a clue how to be a parent.
Right.
Like, there's very, you have to learn as you go along, right? I'm not a parent. It would scare the shit out of me to be a parent. I think out of everything we do in life, we are regulated on how to drive. We're regulated on pretty much everything that we do, right? Or that anything that we consume is regulated. Everything, apart from being a parent. And there's times when social services come in. We call them social services. I don't know what you call them in America, but like if a child's being abused or they're having a bad time in the family, like that gets reported, and then sometimes it gets picked up. But so many times it doesn't get picked up. And then when the child is taken away from their family, that's even more trauma. And it's like, maybe there should be something where it's like, obviously every parent's different. Everything's different. Like no one's one the same, but like maybe there should be something where it's like, this is a guide to be a good parent, or this is a guide to have a kid. I think I don't want to sound like, and this might annoy people, but I don't care. I don't think everyone should have kids.
Oh, absolutely not. No.
I think there's a lot of people that need to sit themselves down in the mirror and go, can I even fend for myself? And if you can't fend for yourself, you can't fend for your fucking kids.
Or anybody else, man. I mean, that's, I think the older you get, the more you realize that, you can't really take care of anybody until you sort of figure your own shit out. I think with the parenting thing, it's tough though, only because there's such, everybody's different. Everyone. Like there's just a million kinds of people, and, and the kids like all need different approaches.
Totally.
I'm at the age now, I don't know how old you are, but I'm at the age now where all of my friends are having kids or had kids in the last few years. And so they're all comparing notes and talking about it and what works for them. And it's fascinating for me to watch. I don't have kids, but to watch it, because so much of it, it's like, oh, well, this worked for me. And then another one of my friends like, oh, I tried that and it didn't work at all. And my kid hates me.
Yeah. And I think that's the thing why in this, I'm looking at it a very like black and white kind of like, I don't know what the word is, but like, that probably wouldn't work. But I think like education, all like everything like everyone's a baby, right? And I think when you see somebody in the street and they act like a dickhead, they're disrespectful to somebody, they respond to something very differently, how you probably shouldn't respond. I think the best way to look at it is like that person has not learned the tools on how to deal with this. And we can all do that. We can all throw our rattles at the pram, and I can as well. I can get pissed off like in certain situations. But it's also being able to like self-evaluate yourself and self-evaluate going, am I going to respond to this situation this way, or am I going to respond to this situation this way? And I think for me growing up is like, I was extremely fortunate to, and I'm not saying I'm perfect, I'm far from it, but I was extremely fortunate to have a family that you do something and then you learn by it. You do something but then you learn by it, and vice versa. And I remember my brother like saying to my mum, like, because my mum's a therapist. My dad's a therapist as well, but my mum's been a therapist for a long time, all my whole life. And she would like sit us down and like we'd talk about our feelings at dinner table. And we'd talk about if something like, if someone had pissed us off, or like what's going on at school, and they would talk about what's going on at work for them. They talk about what's going on in their life, like very like open. And like my brother, I remember my brother saying like, "Mum, why can't you just hit us like other children rather than making us talk about our feelings?"
Well, I was going to say, because so often when you're a kid, you just have a negative, whatever you're forced to do, even if it's something healthy, like talking about your feelings, there'll be that opposite. You want to push back on it, you know?
Mm. Yeah, massively. Yeah, it's tough. Like, who likes talking about their feelings? I fucking hate it. Like, I would literally avoid it as much as I possibly can, unless like if it's feelings in like a negative way. Right. Like if there's something that's making me feel uncomfortable, or where I'm like, I need to have this conversation, but I don't want to. But I know after the conversation I'll feel better. But I am the worst I'm the worst at that. I drag it out all day long. I drag it out for it. How many times have we all been in relationships and dragged out a relationship for an extra year than it should have been?
Oh yeah, just because you don't want to have the conversation.
Yeah, and the conversation takes 10 minutes.
Oh yeah, and then it's done. I mean, it's so funny, man. It makes me think like to look at this through the lens of what we do, and talking about like having a good basis or a good base to operate from when you're a kid going into adulthood. Because I think this is something I talk about on this podcast a fair amount, is like, especially when you see younger artists coming into the game, like up and coming people. It's like, I've been doing this long enough now that I kind of know what this whole game does to people. I know what it has done to me, and like the basics that you're going to need to deal with emotionally. But it's such a crazy line of work that I think if you show up with any sort of minor issues can get blown up into these major issues, just because there really aren't a lot of guardrails. There's a lot less mechanisms to take care of people, to make sure everyone's doing all right, that kind of thing. I don't know. Would you agree?
Yeah, I think obviously like mental health in music has been a huge thing over the past, I'd say 3-4 years. That's kind of popped up, and it pops up and goes and pops up and goes. And then someone sadly kills themselves or does something, and then it pops back up again. I don't think it's, yes, I agree. It needs to be worked on in the music industry. Or just art industry. Anybody that's trying to do their passion as their job, I think, where they're kind of doing it alone, I think it's the same. But I also think it's just overall life. I think mental health, a lot of people don't look at mental health as a part of their health. And you could be the most successful person in the world and still successful. I'm talking about financially. You can have all the family, you can have the kids, you can have everything that you've ever wanted in a materialistic and in a non-materialistic way. But you can still be unhappy because you haven't dealt with what you've gone through in the past, or whatever that is, you still haven't dealt with it. And I think it's something that it's a bit different in America. Therapy is like a bit more of a fashionable thing in America. And I use the word fashionable like loosely, but
no,
like
I know what you mean.
I never forget, like you go to LA and everyone talks about their therapist very openly.
Yeah.
Sorry to people in LA, but I think in Europe and in the UK, it's very much, I can't speak for Europe, maybe probably, but I can speak for the UK. It wasn't a thing. Therapy isn't a thing so much. It is in my life because I've been around it my whole life.
Right.
But like,
that's the stereotype of you guys, of British people in general, is the stiff upper lip, kind of
exactly.
don't show emotion kind of thing.
Yeah. And I think, it's not just music industry, it's culture. And I think we all have to look after ourselves, and nobody else can look after me. Nobody else. It's only me. It's only me that can go and choose to go get a therapist or go do something for my mental health. Whatever that is, it works differently for everybody.
Yeah.
I think realistically, like everybody needs to, and I don't like telling people what to do, but if you're struggling, you need to go get help. It's like if you've broken your arm, you're going to go get your arm fixed.
Right.
It's exactly the same. Just because you can't see your brain and you can't see your emotions, we can feel them, and we feel them probably way harder than we do a broken arm or a broken leg, because they're always there. And it's just about personal growth. I think for me is like, I want to be the best me I can possibly be for myself. And then if I can be the best possible me for myself, then that then radiates to everybody around me. That radiates to my friendships, that radiates to my family, that also radiates to my career.
Absolutely.
And for me, that's super important. It's the same with health. Like, go get your blood work done, go to the gym, go be fit and healthy, like be the best possible thing.
Well, this makes me wonder, for you personally, like, obviously growing up, your parents are therapists, that you're around these things, you're going to rehab centers and seeing how treatment is done, all that kind of thing. It's normalized at a young age.
Super.
But were you thinking about these kind of things at a young age? Because when I was getting ready to talk to you, I was looking at it, correct me if I'm wrong, but I mean, you started DJing and performing at fairly young, at like a semi-professional level, right?
Yeah, I was my first set in a club. I think I was like 12 or 13. I was also doing like discos before then, like shitty weddings and stuff like that, which always amazes me. Could you imagine like a 10-year-old turning up to do your wedding?
No, that's fucking weird. Well, how did you?
So weird.
Wait, but so how did this even start though? Why were you a 12-year-old wedding DJ?
I wanted to be a DJ. So
but why? Like what music did you hear, or who did you see?
I listened to Faithless, Chemical Brothers, Fatboy Slim.
Okay.
They were like the ones for me. My dad took me to see Faithless when I was like 11.
Oh, amazing.
In a way, it was like, it was the best experience of my life, and was before, like, I've always listened to dance music. Like, it might have been shit dance music, but I've always listened to dance music. So it was always kind of there.
Was that a normal thing where you were coming from, which is outside of Bristol? Is that right?
Yeah, I was born in Bristol, but I live like 35 minutes away. No, it wasn't a normal thing. Really wasn't. We're quite a musical family, like listening wise. My mum's a great singer. My dad is the least musical person. He can't fucking tap in rhythm at all. He can't dance in rhythm. It's fucking hilarious. Yeah. But he's got great musical taste and did have a very big vinyl collection. And we always, as a family, we always listen to music. I think that's kind of standard in a lot of situations. Yeah, I wanted to be a DJ. I wanted to...
You saw, say, Faithless or Chemical Brothers or whoever, and instead of just being that fan, you were like, I want to do what they're doing.
Yeah, I don't actually fully know I was so young, but the first time I went to to become a DJ, I guess, like there was like a local caravan site, and my dad's friend that he used to play rugby with was like the resident DJ at this caravan site. I went when I was like 9 years old. Like it's so long ago that I can't really remember.
Well, can you, for people in the US who maybe don't have as much familiarity, when you say caravan site, what are we talking about exactly?
I don't think you have them here, but they're like RV.
Yeah, we do have like RV parks.
Okay, so yeah, like an RV park that, like in the UK, there's like a caravan sites, and a caravan site people would go drive their caravans, which are like small RVs, right, and have like a holiday, have like a vacation. And in that holiday, in that caravan site, there would be like a hall, and they would do like bingo, and they would do like parties and stuff like that.
Right.
They'd serve food. It would be a bar. It'd just be a big gathering, really. So he was resident there, a guy called Tomo. And I'd just go and help him. And it started from there, and then I was learning to play the keyboard, piano. I can't remember the age. And then we were in a music shop, my mum, my dad and I, and there was like a poster for the DJ Academy. And mum was like, why don't you do that? And I was like, okay, cool. I think they bought it for me as a present.
Like the lessons.
Yeah. So it was a course. It was like a 10-week course. And it was a bunch of people all go in, and we'd learn how to DJ. But it wasn't, we were playing on vinyl. It was back when vinyl was vinyl. There wasn't CDJs then. Well, there probably was, but they were like the rack mounted CDJs.
Yeah.
And yeah, it was just like we learned everything from like how to record a demo, how to make the artwork for a demo, how to promote yourself, how to do all of that. And this was 2002, 2003.
Yeah, that's kind of crazy. That's like, because usually, at least in the States, there were a couple well-known sort of production programs around the country, like even early on, that maybe someone would go to. But for the most part, either they didn't exist at that time, or it was like more or less a ripoff, and you didn't really learn anything.
I think you've also got to remember, like British culture was purely round raving.
Yeah.
And it has been ever since America decided not to have it. So it's like since the 90s, we've been raving, and DJ culture, although it was back then, I say back then, it was like, 20 years ago. Fuck me.
Yeah, no.
That's a long time. I didn't realize that. Back then, DJing was geeky as fuck, and no one wanted to be one apart from a bunch of weird dudes, and like occasionally the odd girl. I remember on that course there was like 20 dudes and one girl,
right?
Joe. I remember her name was Joe. So weird that I remember that. But yeah, like it was amazing. It was amazing. And then like after the 10 weeks, you learn it in a club. So like during the day, it's like, or evening, and then they have different setups, and as like beginners, medium, kind of leveled, and then the guys that are good and just practicing really. And then you will put a night on at the end of the week, the 10 weeks. So yeah, the 13, I think I was 13.
I mean, that's amazing, man. What kind of music was the 13, 14-year-old Will Clarke playing out at these clubs?
I was playing like soulful, funky house, like very classic house, defected, Frankie Knuckle vibe house music, like proper house. It's weird because growing up around like the southwest of the UK, it's very drum and bass,
right,
and hard style orientated, or hard style was really big back then, and drum and bass and jungle was obviously huge from Bristol.
And Bristol, so like, I was looking up because I realized I only sort of partially knew the Bristol like dance music history. So I was looking it up more, and I had sort of forgotten that like a bunch of the like trip hop pioneers also from that area.
Massive Attack, Portishead, They're all from Bristol area. Portishead is actually the band, but Portishead is actually a place near Bristol.
Oh, I had no idea.
Yeah. So I'm pretty sure they called themselves after that, but yeah.
Right. Did any of that like vibe stick around, or was it mostly that like harder thing when you were coming up?
It stuck around. They were still doing stuff. They were still putting music out.
Sure.
And then drum and bass was huge. It all kind of trip hop and drum and bass, all kind of, and then dubstep and dub. In Bristol, there's a huge Jamaican population. So like dub reggae is huge.
Yeah.
So it's like Bristol's just the most amazing city. Like obviously I'm biased, but I think it's the best city in the UK, especially musically. Yeah, you don't have like, it's not London, right?
Right.
London is where all of the writing gets done and everything like that. But culturally, I think Bristol is one of the best for music. It's just a hodgepodge of different cultures.
Do you still live out there or live around there?
Yeah, so I live pretty similar where I grew up. But yeah, I live like 30, 40 minutes away.
Oh, that's Bristol. Great, man. And then do you split your time in the US, or are you like, you're in Detroit right now, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So when I started touring so much in America, I ended up getting a place in Detroit. So I'm in Detroit now. I think I'm mostly in Europe this year. Been mostly in the UK. I don't know. But yeah, it's when I'm touring America, South America, I usually base myself in America.
Right.
And then when I'm overseas, I'm back in the UK.
You have a podcast, the Will Clarke Podcast, where you are talking to other DJs and producers and people in the music industry in general. And it's great. How long have you been doing it now? A few years?
April 2020.
Oh, okay. So pandemic. That was your pandemic, baby.
Yeah. It's I wanted to start. So I had a radio show beforehand, and then I stopped the radio show in 2019 because I was like, I wanted to do a podcast, but I just didn't make the time to do the podcast.
Yeah.
And then April, I was like, let's just fucking do it, and worked out how to do it eventually, and it got good eventually.
What about it, other than, that sort of uninterrupted conversation that we were talking about? What was the seed of the idea? Why did you want to do it in the first place?
I like having conversations with people on a one-to-one basis. We don't do it enough. And especially now, I don't think we do it enough at all, with attention spans, kind of 15-second videos, left, right, and center, this sold out this show, haven't sold out this show, new record coming out. And I'm just talking about in our industry, let alone the rest of the world.
Well, sure. I mean, if you think about like the people we see, ostensibly our peers and our friends, when do we see them and what do we talk to them about? It's like you see them backstage, you talk for 10, maybe 15 minutes, and it's basically, how you doing? Where are you coming from? Where are you going? Bye.
Yeah. How much sleep did you get last night?
Yeah.
It's how's the family? It's very surface level.
Yeah.
And I'd much rather have a non-surface level conversation with somebody, and it not necessarily be about music. It not necessarily be about anything, but it's just like, let's just get to know each other. And then I think relationships grow from that as well. Like, don't get me wrong, I'm not best friends with everybody that I've had on my podcast, but there's some podcasts that I've had that have really like turned into amazing friendships.
Yeah, me too. Me too. Absolutely.
And I think that just comes from conversation. Like, it's although we're fortunate enough to be in the public eye and meet a lot of people, we don't actually meet a lot of people.
Yeah.
If that makes sense. It's like very, very fleeting all the time, and relationships are hard to keep, and just because you're always in a new city, you're always somewhere else. And I've tried over my career, I've tried to really grow relationships with people in different cities, so that I know that if I'm going to Chicago, I've got friends in Chicago and I can go and have dinner with them, and I can go and be there an extra day if I want, or not that I ever really do that, but like I always kind of have a good friendship base in certain cities. And I think that's helped me so much because I get to explore the city with somebody else that's there. I get to have really good conversations. It's not just like, we're not just talking about music. Like the last thing I want to do is talk about music. If I'm honest, like, yeah, you talk about it, but realistically, like I'd rather talk about what you're up to in your life and shit like that, or like conspiracy theories. Just like just other shit, because I think
part of that is just being a normal person, right? Like,
exactly,
because what we do, I couldn't feel more grateful or luckier to be doing it, and there's nothing else I would want to do, but it doesn't really make you feel like a normal person most of the time, you know? Like,
it's just also like it's our job.
Right.
And as much of it is for personally, and this isn't for everybody, but I have the best job in the world. But also, and I understand why people are interested in it. I understand why people want to talk about it. And I also have to respect that. But I just think having non-surface level relationships is way more important to me than just knowing people and having fleeting visits. So going back to the original question, that's kind of why I started it. And yes, I'm sure you've had the same, where you have somebody on the podcast where they're not that great at conversation and it takes a long time to like get, and then it comes to the end of the podcast and you're like, fuck me, that was hard. It was a hard conversation. But generally, they're just the shorter conversations, right? For me, like there comes a point when you're just like, you know what, I'm done trying. Not in a horrible way, but it's like some people just don't. They just don't get it, which is fine. We can't all be great conversationists, and it's taken me so long to like be okay at it, and I'm not even that great at it, and I'm still learning on how to do it and how to kind of run. You're not controlling the conversation, but like being dynamic with the conversation.
Yeah, and kind of just keeping it on the rails to a certain extent. Like there is, in a way, it's kind of like DJing to me, in that you have to be very in the moment. You have to be very locked into the people in front of you. You have to be engaging in what's going on. But some part of your brain also has to be thinking about what's going to happen next, right?
Yeah.
And
totally. Yeah. You have to have, But I think that's the thing about a podcast, is that it's still, other people are still listening, and it still has to be, I really dislike doing like interviews. No, that's a lie. I like doing interviews, but I think like having the podcast and creating it as an interview, I really struggle with it.
Yeah.
Because it's very, it starts for a boring conversation. And I know some people like to know that, but I think for me, it's selfishly, the podcast is for me. It's not for anybody else.
Dude, I tell people that all the time. Yeah.
And then if somebody else likes it, then sweet.
Right.
It's great.
Yeah. Well, that's part of it too. Talking about the longer conversations, for me, I realized very quickly once I started doing the podcast, I was like, I can just force people to sit down and talk to me uninterrupted for an hour. And there's no other format, because otherwise you feel like you would be imposing on somebody's time. But with the podcast, you're like, no, we're like creating this thing together, and we'll put it out, and it'll like kind of, maybe it'll give you some little boost, or you can post about it. So at least it's like you're giving them something, and then it kind of, you don't have to worry about taking up their time,
Yeah, totally. No, I agree with that. Yeah. Totally.
So talking about like the lifestyle that we lead, city to city, talking about like trying to establish relationships in different places. Is that something you learned young as well? Because am I right that you were already like DJing in Ibiza by the time you were 16, 17?
Yeah.
Was that weird? Like, was that odd and isolating, or was it just exciting when you're that age?
That is the best fucking thing ever.
Yeah.
I think my parents are very social. So like I grew up with them always having friends over for dinner, always kind of going to dinner parties, just being social. Like with my dad playing rugby, it was always, we'd all be down the rugby club, helping everyone cook and then feeding everybody. It was just a very social upbringing. And I think although I'm actually pretty antisocial in a sense where I guess I'm kind of introverted to a certain extent, where I love having people around me that I'm really like. But the minute it kind of turns into a group of people that I don't fully know that well or something, I kind of just go in a little bit. And it's like, you'll never really catch me go to an after party because I'm just like, I'm going into a situation that I know that I'm probably not going to enjoy.
Yeah.
Unless I'm DJing. I'm not really somebody that would go to a club just to go and have fun. Like, I don't do that, and I never have done that. My first experience was in a club was DJing. So
really, so you weren't even going out to stuff before then.
No.
Interesting.
Don't get me wrong, I have.
Sure.
But I'd much rather go see like a live show than go to a club.
Yeah.
So I think like the whole social thing, it's just, for me, it's just about having good people around me rather than just people. It's very easy to have people around you all the time, kind of like yes people, if that makes sense.
Oh, of course, yeah.
That's not for me. I want somebody that's going to challenge me. I want somebody that I can challenge them. I want somebody that we can actually have a relationship with and have great conversations with, and that's really important to me. I think I just learned that from my parents, really.
Yeah. Just watching their example.
Yeah, like I live where we live is like a small village. It's like a small area. Like Somerset itself is like a county, but where we live, I've always lived around that area, and like you just get to know people because it's such a small area.
Right.
So like, yeah, my parents know everybody, if you know what I mean. And I think it's just that thing is like, just be nice to people and you'll build a relationship with them, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I mean, to take it back to Ibiza for a second, and you as a teenager DJing there. Well, okay, two-part question. First, how did that happen in the first place? And then second, like if you think back to relationships around that time, were you doing that with people? Did you form friendships there? Like, what are your impressions, memories of that time in your life?
So I used to go buy my vinyl from a record shop called Spin Central that was in Weston-super-Mare, which is like a town kind of near where I live. In that record shop, there was a girl that would sell records for the house stuff. And her name was was Sam, who is Sam Divine. And she was embarking in her DJ career then as well, just starting. And she used to put on a night in Weston-super-Mare, and she asked me to play for her. So I played for her. The whole Ibiza came up was she went to Ibiza, got a residency, and then asked me to go and play I would go and play when I was out there. And then it just started from there, really. And I think this whole industry is built on relationships. I think life is built on relationships. You can work your way to a certain level through talent, but I wouldn't say I'm the most talented person.
Right.
And I just know that I will work as hard as I possibly need to get to where I need to get to. And I will also make sure that the people around me are treated nice. And that's how I got my residency in Ibiza to start with. Was like, I made friends with a lot of people and somebody asked me.
Yeah, I love that, man. That's like, That sounds so simple, but you're right. That's the way all the best things happen. And I have similar stories when I was coming up. Yeah, you just show up, you be a nice person, you treat other people kindly and establish real human relationships. And the rest just kind of comes. Like, I'm sure you get this some with your podcast too. You know, people are like, oh, I want to know like the secret to how somebody made it, you know, that kind of thing. And there's almost never a secret. It's almost always just some story of like, yeah, like I met a guy and then we were friends and then, you know, this came out of that.
Yeah. How much do you think luck's involved?
I think I'll say timing, I think is very important. And a lot of timing, I think, is luck of just happening to be in the right place at the right time. Because I think there's plenty of examples I can point to of somebody making really incredible forward-thinking music that just they weren't making it at the right time when people were ready to hear it or when that appetite was there. Or the opposite, when all of a sudden somebody makes some crazy tune or tries some weird idea at the time when everyone's ready, or maybe they're bored of whatever's going on, and then that person is on a rocket ship. So I think timing is very important, and I think timing is very tied to luck. So I think luck plays a fair part. What do you think?
Yeah, I agree. I think luck is so huge in this industry. Hard work is, but luck. And there's a saying, you create your own luck and everything like that. But luck is huge. Yeah,
I mean, a thing I talk about a lot that I think is pretty true is I think the hard work part is you work really hard so that when the luck happens, you're ready for it, you know?
Yeah, totally. And you never know when that's going to happen.
Yeah. Did you have any of those moments? Anytime like something really accelerated quickly that you weren't anticipating?
No. My career.
You're an unlucky DJ.
My career has been, I'm very lucky because I still get to do what I'm doing, but I think my career has been a steady growth rather than a massive. I've not had a hit record. Realistically, like I'm talking about hit record stuff is like to have a hit record is so hard.
Yeah.
And then once you've had the hit record to then keep growing and sustain that level. But yeah, I think luck is a tough one because I think it depends what luck stands for you. Yes, I've been very lucky, but have I had something that's like really changed my life? No.
Yeah.
I guess the thing that did change my life the most was signing a record to Dirtybird when I first started. But realistically, that was also the downfall of my career after a certain level.
Oh, like you think you started getting pigeonholed by that a little bit?
100%. Massively. And then 2020 launched. When I stopped releasing on Dirtybird in 2018, decided to go more European sounding, I guess, if that's such thing now. But like, and I don't want to say techno because it's just a fashion word to say, but like I was releasing on more techno record labels. And then 2020 launched my own record label. And then it's just been a slow trajectory up of my career. And I think for me is like, I'm happy I haven't had a hit record. I'm really happy that I haven't had a hit record earlier because I've had big records, but I've not had a hit record where something changes over. And there's honestly, there's not many people that have had a hit record.
Sure.
This is the thing is like, you can have a great career and not have a hit record. And you can just, it's so easy in this world to just look at the top and look at the headliners and look at all the people that are just headlining everywhere and selling out shows everywhere and things like that. And I think it's quite an unhealthy part of the industry where that's all you see.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
But going back to the question, I haven't, my career has just been slowly up. Lots of peaks and troughs, but like slowly, gradually up. And we're still like, I'm still nowhere near where I want to be.
Yeah.
But it's still a slow, gradual, which I think is so important because I've learned so much over the years. And I think if I had a hit record when I first started touring like full time, like 8 years ago, I would be fucked.
Yeah, because it can knock you off course, right? Like it raises all these other questions of like, I don't know. I've talked to people who had hit records that, you can get lost after that, because then it's like, oh, now there's all these expectations and, oh, is this my sound? Like, am I now married to the sound of this one record I made that one day? That kind of thing.
Yeah. And I think also then when you're worth a certain value, because you're worth a certain value when you've had it. We're all worth a certain value financially, right? Yeah. Especially, I'm talking in music wise. Yeah. Like, and the way the industry's changed is the way you're looked upon is I'm not saying all cases, but in a lot of cases, it's not about how good your music is. It's about how many tickets you can sell or how many streams you can sell or whatever. Or what you look like or what skin color you are or whatever. Like all these factors are kind of put in that I don't think anyone fully talks about in the broader behind the scenes.
Sure.
And I'm talking record labels, promoters, agents, blah, blah, managers, blah, 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 all of that. We all have a value. And I think when you have a hit record, your value just tenfolds and everybody wants you.
Yeah.
And when everybody wants you, it's very hard to keep people around you that are going, yeah, you probably shouldn't do that.
Yeah.
Or, yeah, that record's actually shit. Don't release it.
Right.
Because in 10 years' time, you're going to regret that. Or somebody that's going, actually, no, go work on that record again. Go make it better. Stop being lazy. Don't do that show. Don't put that tweet out.
Right.
Don't do this. Like someone that actually will really challenge you. And don't get me wrong, there's people out there that does, but I think we've seen it over the years where it's not just in our small industry of underground dance music, in the commercial world. Like you see it and you see people become extremely successful and then fall fucking on their ass and then everyone laughs at them. And it's like, it's sad that that's the case. But my thing of having a slow grow build of a career is that, yes, it can be frustrating. Yes, I compare myself to people all the time and I've gotten a lot better at that. And yes, I want to be more successful and want to sell more tickets and want more money and want all of the stuff that we all want. But realistically, I've been able to build a team around me and relationships around me that is purely built on what foundationally is important to me, right, rather than just a value.
Yeah. You've been able to define your own value to yourself, which I think, you're right that a lot of times you can see people who are clearly defining their value based on all the external stuff and based on what other people think their value is.
Totally.
Yeah, that's
and I can see right through it. It's sad.
Oh, for sure.
Like, I don't think a lot of people can, if I'm honest. I think it's when you're in the trenches, you can see through it. But I also think it's great that we have an industry that you can have not released a single record and then 6 months later you release your first record and you're like the biggest thing known to man.
Yeah.
If you know what I mean. It's like it's fucking amazing.
Oh, it's fun and it's exciting. And I mean, I think either from the DJ perspective or just the listener perspective, like that's all of the fun. Like that's what got us into it in the first place is, hearing a song and digging for the tune and finding some remix that you hadn't heard before. It's like, it's all the chase of it. And I think, again, just by doing this podcast long enough, I've realized for a lot of people that is kind of the appeal. Is it's not so much about I want to get to this level or I want to have this accomplishment. It's the gamification of it, right? Where it's just like, how far can we get now that we're on this level? What more can we do? And I think some people are just never satisfied with staying.
Well, I think the proof's in the pudding. You look at like Tiesto, right?
Yeah.
And it's like he has earned probably the most money David Guetta as well in this dance music era. And he's been doing it way before I was doing it. And he's still at the top of his game. And I think some people would question it. And it's like, he doesn't need to do it. He's fucking worth millions, like hundreds of millions. But like, why does he still do it? And it's because he fucking loves it.
Yep.
Must love it. I don't know. I don't know him. Like I've spoke to him very briefly online, but like, that's all I can imagine. Because it's the same for me. Is like, I know that if I won the lottery tonight and won hundreds of millions, I would still be doing everything.
Yeah.
Not the same way. I'd be doing it a bit nicer. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
I'm going to be flying first class everywhere, but like, and things will level up. Like my podcast will be amazing because I can fly people out and we can do all of that.
A nice little studio.
Yeah. But like, I would still do exactly the same.
I think it's love. And I would say also when I talk to people doing it on the highest levels, and maybe you can speak to this, maybe you have some knowledge that I don't, but I think addiction comes into it to a certain point too. There's some people doing it where it's like, why are you still doing it? And I'm like, oh, because you don't know how to stop, you know?
I think it depends what you class addiction as.
Yeah.
Because for me, addiction is when you do something that affects your life in a negative way and affects others around you in a negative way.
Yeah.
That's everyone's like, there is probably a definition of addiction, but for me, that's what addiction is where it's unhealthily to me as a person and unhealthy for the people around me because of my actions. And I think it's the want for more. I think that's the thing more so with it. I think I sometimes need to assess, and I think a lot of people in this industry want to assess or need to look at and be why do we want more?
Right.
I also think cutting that back is this, you never know when it's going to end. And I think that's the strange thing about this industry. Like I can train to be a lawyer and I'm a lawyer for the rest of my life, right? I can go get a job in a law firm. Same with a doctor, like same with pretty much everything. This industry is purely based on your public perception and how much value you have, right?
Yeah, the heat.
So if I am only worth $1,000 a show or $500 a show, and I'm only doing one show a month, I can't, maybe some people can, but I can't survive off $500 a month or $1,000 a month. Like earning $12,000 a year, like I that's not giving me the life that I want for my own life.
Yeah.
So I think that is also the thing, is like for so long growing up when you grow up into the industry, you're earning shit money. So, and it's all you want to do. So you will earn shit money and you'll do it for shit money and you'll do it for nothing. And like there's still shows now where I realistically make zero money.
Oh yeah.
In certain situations, and I still play it because I want to play. But I think because it can go away, I think for me that's why it's the want for more and more and more. Is like I want to be, when this ends, I want to be able to be financially okay that I can, or have the skill level to then come out of this to be able to go do something else.
Sure. And to not look back and be like, I could have done more there.
Exactly.
Right?
I've got so many friends that I grew up with doing music that had the balls. Not the balls, it's probably not the best thing to say, but I would say that, but yeah, fuck it, probably not the best thing to say, but like had the minerals, they had part of the minerals to go the whole way and they just didn't put the work in.
Yeah, I've seen it too. I think everyone doing this, of course, there's plenty of people like that.
And there's also people, sorry to butt in, but there's also a lot of people that I looked up to going into my career, and they were extremely successful and it fell off for them. And realistically, I think it happened. Well, look at COVID. COVID destroyed so many people's, I'm only talking music industry, but I know it did it for a lot of other people as well. But it destroyed so many careers because I think people were they just thought they would come back. They thought they didn't have to do anything for 2 years and didn't come back.
Yeah.
And everything came back, and then there's new kids on the block that are getting booked. And because they didn't do anything for 2 years, like, no one gives a fuck. It's like, who are you? Like, never heard of you. So I think people became complacent. And I think that's something for me is like not becoming complacent with where you're at. And I think that's the need for more.
Yeah.
Is that by staying in the now and not expecting anything, going into this with zero expectations is for me the best thing that I can possibly do, because I then have zero expectations to come out of it. And if just keep going and you're not ever like, you'll go play a show to like 20,000 people, and then you'll go play a show the night after to like 50 people because you haven't sold enough tickets in a certain market. For me, that is like the drive to keep going and keep going and keep going.
Yeah. There's always something more you could do, some little thing you can shore up, some project you can pay attention. Yeah. I feel that 100%. It makes me wonder for you, was music always the thing? Like, or was there a moment when you kind of realized like, this could be my job. This could be the rest of my life?
It was always like from day one, there was two things. It was either rugby or music.
Oh yeah. Were you good at rugby?
I was good, but like in the grand scheme of things, like for me to get professional, I would have probably had to have grown 4 or 5 inches. And I'm small. Like I'm 5'3".
Right.
Like the guys that I was playing, when I was 15. Well, yeah, when I was 15, I was playing 2-3 years above me. So you're playing against 18-year-olds.
Oh, wow.
Like it's fine. But like the difference between an 18-year-old and a 15-year-old, you're playing against young men.
Yeah.
And that was it. Like I would play and I'd hold my own, but like I'm just not, I don't have the genes to be that, if you know what I mean. Like I'm good friends with James Haskell, who's an ex-England rugby player. And he's a fucking unit. Like he's like 20 stone and like 6'5". And like could you imagine me up against that on a weekly basis?
Well, let me ask you a very ignorant American question, because my rugby knowledge is limited. Is it like American football also, where like you have a shelf life, like it's super hard on the body?
First of all, you can never compare American football to rugby.
Apologies.
It's the most disrespectful thing ever. But yeah, it's like, it's well-skilled American football.
Yeah. But I'm just saying, rugby's also hard on the body, right? Like impact.
I'd say it's harder on the body than American football.
Yeah. So that's another reason, just as far as like things to go into too, where it's like, you know, professional sports in general. It's like, what do you know, if you have an incredible career, you'll get 10 years maybe?
Easy. Yeah. Easy. Yeah. And they're hard. Like their bodies are destroyed.
Oh, yeah.
And also the thing with rugby is it's managed by, in the UK, it's managed by a governing body called the RFU, Rugby Football Union. And wages are capped. So I think the max, don't quote me on this, but I think the max wage you can earn is 250,000 a year.
Oh, interesting.
As a professional rugby player. Which may sound like a lot for some people, But if your career length is 5 years and you start when you're 20, well, you start very young in rugby, but when, let's say, for instance, you go in at 25 and you're earning 250 grand a year, and you literally last until you're 30 and you can't physically play anymore. Like, there's nothing else.
Right.
Like, you can't do anything else. So you have to go retrain, you have to go work out what you want to do, or unless you're very good at social media nowadays and you kind of build a brand that way. But like, not many rugby players are good at that. Like, there's only a handful of people that have been successful in that.
Well, it's interesting. Now you're making me think about what we do again, because there's a few people I've talked to on this podcast and just other friends. Like, there's definitely ex-athletes who become DJs afterwards. Like, I don't know if you know Whip Cream, the DJ Whip Cream. She was like a pre-Olympic figure skater until she had like a crazy injury and couldn't skate anymore, and then started doing this. Also, there's a dude in bass music, Keizo, who was like a crazy like semi-pro hockey player. And then I don't know if it was like an injury or something else happened, but then he had to switch gears. Or you even look at like, take like Shaq, who's now just a full-on fucking balls to the wall dubstep DJ. Yeah. It's kind of funny, man.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
Crazy. It's the same with James Haskell. He's the same. He DJs now as well. And I think like, that's the thing. It goes back to, for me, like I was 17, I'd broken every finger I'd broken my arm twice. I had a reoccurring shoulder injury. My Achilles tendons were fucked. I was 17. Yeah. And I just kind of like assessed the situation. I was playing school, I was playing club, I was playing county. I was playing rugby like full time, pretty much. Not for money, but like full time. And it got to a point where I was just like, I went to Ibiza when I got booked to play, and I was like, this is way, way nicer. So yeah, it was either music or rugby for me. And realistically, it was never rugby.
Yeah.
It was the pipe dream was I could play for England, but looking back, like, you have to be realistic, and that was not a realistic goal.
Yeah. No, that makes sense, man. Although it's funny that then music, because to so many people, music is the unrealistic goal. You know what I mean? As opposed to like a more straight and narrow job.
I actually don't think anything's an unrealistic goal ever, unless genetics get involved.
Right. Sure.
Because like, my dream could be like, I want to be the best basketball player in the world. I'm never, or the best weightlifter in the world. Like, my genes are not made for that, so I'm not. But like anything else, like, I could be the best doctor in the world if I wanted.
Sure.
Facts. Like, I think it's just having that mindset. I 100% could.
Oh man, you just reminded me earlier when you were talking about like, I could train to be a lawyer and then I'm a lawyer forever, a doctor forever. It made me think of the only reason you wouldn't be a lawyer or doctor forever is because lawyers and doctors, you have to recertify every so often. You know, every 5-10 years, you have to like take the boards for the doctor or whatever, renew your license. Yeah. It would be very funny if DJs had to do that. Like every 5 years or so, be like,
well, you do. It's just done differently.
I guess that's true.
Like, if you're a doctor and you get old and stop, I don't know if this actually fits, but like, there's doctors that are shit doctors.
Oh yeah.
If you know what I mean. There's people, it goes back to that complacency. If you become complacent,
you stop learning.
You stop learning and you stop working at your craft. Like, we all have crafts. And it's fine to if you're one of those people that just wants a steady life and that's fine. We need people like that. We do. And I respect people like that, because I can't do that personally. But if you become complacent, it's very easy for your career to end in any life, in all life. Like, you become complacent in you work in a warehouse, and then the new kid on the block comes down. He's 21 years old, wants to become the fucking owner of the factory eventually, and he starts on the line. He's gonna overtake you.
Yeah.
Or she's gonna overtake you. So like, I think it's just life, is that complacency is a huge destroyer.
I agree with that. But I want to make sure, I want to talk about your music, at least for a few minutes here. And mainly, to open it up, my question is, I feel like you're in Detroit right now, and I feel like your music in general has this strong connection to like early American like house and techno, Detroit and Chicago. Like, I can hear those influences strongly. And I wanted to ask where that came from for you, if it was like a conscious thing that you sought out, or if it just kind of, that was what your ear was attracted to. Like, how did that relationship between you out in the outskirts of Bristol to the Midwest of America and like the roots of dance music here, how did that happen?
I think like what we spoke about earlier, when I first started DJing, I was playing like Frankie Knuck, like New York house, really. And then that.
Did you know it was New York house at that time?
Yeah. I knew it because I was told it, if you know what I mean. I didn't know really much about the culture then. Because I was still super young in it. But like, I remember in the UK, we have a thing called college, which is almost like high school in America. So it's like 16 to 18. And you can go off and we have colleges, and you can go and do like certain courses. So I went and did, so 16 to 18, I went and did music technology. And in part of that course, we had to do the history of DJing.
Oh, that's so cool.
Yeah, it was really interesting. And it's weird that I've only just remembered this from that question. I've only just remembered that we did this. And that's when I went in on like really learning the history of like who's who of what. And yeah, it was really interesting actually thinking about it. And I remember like handing it. I was like the only DJ in the class as well. And I remember like everyone would like hand in like a couple of pages, and like mine was like 10 pages of just like I went in on it. I was like, I have to pass this. I'm the only DJ and I have to pass it.
Yeah, right. You can't look bad.
So yeah, it was, I think that going back to influences, my sound's changed over the years. What a lot of people knew me for initially was the kind of the Dirtybird, more like, I wouldn't say ghetto house, but like, get a softer side of the ghetto house kind of vibe. An evolution of Chicago G house.
A little bouncier maybe.
Just not as hard, not as fast as well.
Yeah.
And not as aggressive. Like, it's very aggressive, that stuff. Because it comes from the streets. That's what those boys are. And then when I kind of evolved and kind of changed my sound, it then went a little bit more European. And right now it's like kind of going back to like more soulful house with a more like tougher beats on, really. And I think now is like the time where I'm really finding what my sound is for now. But I'm working on a project at the moment, and it's like completely changing again. And for me, it's just like, now I'm not trying to be anything or anyone and just write great music. I sent a record to my manager last night that I'd finished, which is a collab between me and Honey Love. And he was like, dude, I wasn't expecting this record from you, but it's fucking great. And he was like, it's a bit more tech house. And I'm like, yeah, but it's a great record. And I think that's the thing, is like, I just want to make good music. That's the only thing. And whether that good record is like 118 BPM and it gives people the feels, then so be it. If that's a 135 BPM techno record that gives people the feels, then I'm going to make it. and as long as I'm enjoying it, I just don't want to make music for a sound or for a record label or for anything. I literally just write music. And I think that's the joys of having my own record label is I have no one that I need to be associated with. I have no one that I need to fit in with. I can put it out on my own label.
That musical evolution, that you just went through, how much of that is conscious, like a decision where you're like, okay, I need to like try this, or I'm interested in trying this new style, versus kind of just you evolving naturally, and this is just kind of what you feel like writing that day in the studio?
I would love to say the latter, but it's all conscious.
Yeah, that's interesting.
It's all has a level of, maybe not so much now, but it all has a level of planning for me in my head.
Are you planning even further out? Is there like a place you're trying to get to?
Yeah. And everyone will see when that happens.
Okay.
But I think for me, so let's go back to Dirtybird. I had a record on Worthy's label called, well, it's now Ms. Worthy. She had a record label. I don't know if she still owns it actually, called Anabatic. That was my first, not proper release. I've released music before, but I released a record called Big Booty. And that was like the record that really kind of put me on the map in certain situations.
Yeah.
Jamie Jones was playing it. Eats Everything was playing it. Seth Trox, like all the guys at the top of their game. That was when they were like just blowing up. Everyone was like really interested. So then I was like, okay, Jamie Jones playing. I have to write Jamie Jones music. Right. And then I got to a point where I was like, this is really unhealthy because I wasn't made to make Jamie Jones music. But what do I enjoy making? And I was like, well, Booty Percolating did really well. Big Booty did really well for me. So what's the bigger label that I can have a career from? Dirtybird. It's a natural kind of progression. Okay, I need to make Dirtybird music because I like that music. I love Dirtybird. I loved what they put out. Everything they put out back then for me was just fucking beautiful. So I was like, okay, cool. Need to make that. And then when I got to a point with Dirtybird, it was more so the case of me just being bored of what I was writing, and it wasn't pushing me as an artist and wasn't just making me happy as a person. So I then needed to go into other ways. And it was also for me, it's like, I want to play more in Europe. I'm from the UK and can't even get booked in the UK. So what do I need to do that? Yeah. Okay, I need to make more European based music. So I did that. And then the record label was like, okay, I've done a year of releasing on European record labels, but now I'm writing records that don't really fit anywhere. And I'm truly getting, sounds cliche as fuck, and I hate to say it, but I'm getting the Will Clarke sound of what I've always wanted to get, but I don't really have a home for it.
Right.
And I don't really want to put it on somebody else's label because it doesn't fit anybody else. And I want to be able to do what I want with it. So I started All We Have Is Now. So yeah, that's a very quick thing.
Right.
But it's always been, I'm very I'm very goal focused. So it's like, I'm like, okay, I want to be here, but how do I get to here? So then I have to go from here to here to here.
Like breaking it down into smaller steps kind of thing.
Yeah. 100%. Yeah.
Yeah. That makes sense, man. I mean, talking about the Will Clarke sound, so to speak, I was trying to figure out what that was when I was listening to some of your tunes earlier this morning. And to me, what I came to, I don't know if you agree, I think a lot of it for me was actually the drum sounds you end up using. I felt like there was sort of this cohesion across all the different styles and tempos of like these really interesting drum sounds you were using, a lot of which were like, I couldn't come up with the right word, but these sort of like fat or dirty or like dusty sounding drums, you know, some like warehousey style stuff, a lot of like mid-rangey kind of kicks and snares and that sort of thing. And after I listened to a bunch of your tunes in a row, I don't know, is that intentional to you as far as like the sound palette?
Yeah, I think it's all intentional, really. But I also like, that's your opinion. And I respect it. I think it would be wrong for me to sit here and go, this is my sound. Like, my sound is different to everybody.
Of course.
Right? And I think that's the amazing thing about music is like, you can tell me what my sound is more than I can tell you what my sound is.
Yeah, oh, for sure. Yeah. I'm not trying to make you define what you do exactly, but is like I mean, how much do you pay attention to, say, drum selection on a tune?
A lot.
Yeah.
A lot. I think it's really important, but it's also, it has to be the right thing for the right song. Every song's different. And I use like a snare. I call it wheel snare. But it's like, I use that snare a lot because I love the sound of it.
Yeah.
And usually if I put something else in, it sounds shit. But also like there's records that it doesn't fit in. So I'm going to put something else in. I have like a drum machine, like a Russian handmade drum machine that I use a lot of the sounds from. So a lot of my hats and a lot of my shakers are all from that, which gives it a sound. And I think as an artist, you do have to have continuity in your music. Like I use a lot of gospel samples. I use a lot of gospel singers and write a lot of gospel songs. I love that. So that's in a lot of my records as well. And then there's some, like you'll hear like my biggest record at the moment, the Rock With Me, like that was literally just a Tool record. Like it was going back to what we were just talking about.
Yeah.
Patrick Toppin asked me to write an EP for him. So I wrote an EP that sounded like Trick. That doesn't sound like Will Clarke. For what I think is Will Clarke.
Right.
But it is a Will Clarke record and it's somehow fucking doing really well.
Well, that's good, man. I mean, that's kind of like, we can never predict what is going to happen with what we make, right? I think that's one of the earliest lessons you learn is you get so married to a certain idea or a certain song and you're like, this is the one. And it's never the one. It's always some other thing that you didn't expect.
Always.
Are you, the gospel thing made me curious. Are you religious?
No, not at all.
Yeah, I'm not either. And yet I also find like gospel singers and gospel music to be some of the most moving music that exists.
Well, I think there's a theory behind that. I think I really like church. I don't go to church. I really respect what religion is about. And for me, religion is about community.
Sure.
And I think gospel is all about community. And it's about a group of people all singing together and creating a feeling for people watching them. And also allowing anyone to be singing. Like, not everybody in a gospel choir is a fucking amazing singer, right, but they all sound great together.
Yeah.
So I think like for me, the feeling I try to get is in my music is how can I make the community feel good around me? And how can I create that religious kind of, it is like a religious feeling. The club is, without again sounding cliche, it's a community, it's a gathering. And that is for me what religion is gathering of people.
Well, another thing you just made me think of with gospel, and maybe this is getting a little metaphysical, but gospel is like, all gospel music is about trying to like put words to a wordless thing, like singing about God and the things bigger than us that we can't really comprehend or imagine, and trying to sing about them or trying to talk about them, which, dance music to a certain extent, like we all know that feeling. We've all had those moments listening to records, records that don't even have lyrics necessarily, but I don't know what that is. And that's part of it. I'm chasing that feeling.
Yeah, I don't know if I could trust somebody that doesn't like gospel music. I understand if they don't want to listen to it, but if you go and listen to a gospel choir and don't get any feels, I don't know if I could be friends with you.
Yeah, it's true.
It's just how I feel.
Yeah, no, yeah. Somebody who just left that feeling nothing is maybe a psychopath.
It's such emotional music in every possible way. Like one of my favorite shows is Amazing Grace, which is a live recording of Aretha Franklin live in her, can't remember the church she went to, but it was like her local church when she left Detroit. And it's fucking insane. Like, I cried listening, watching it. Like, I was on a plane crying my eyes out. But it's just beautiful music. And I think in the electronic world, especially like festivals and stuff like that, like everyone just wants to bang it out and play bangers.
Yeah.
And you want to play the biggest set ever. And it's very rarely like an emotional... I'm also massively generalizing, because I know there's parts of that, and there's a lot of musicians that do make very emotional music. But for me, it's like, I want to make music that like makes people feel something a bit different than just a tech house roller with using a sample that everyone's heard.
Yeah.
And that's why they like it.
Yeah. Well, okay. So I ask people this a lot, and this is kind of a modified version of the question, but how are you able to do that so we're talking about like making people feel something, taking them to an emotional place, but then there's also the sort of nuts and bolts of just, it's 11 a.m., you sit down in the studio to a blank session. How does that happen mechanically? And so I guess the question is like, again, how intentional is that, as far as like, are there things you've learned over time that you can take people there? Or is it more of kind of being an open conduit in the studio and just following the intuition while you're writing?
Yeah, I think it's all intuition. I think one day I've got a record that's, I don't know if it'll ever come out. It's called Heaven, which I don't know why it's called Heaven. There's no reason why it should be called Heaven. But
well, there's that famous DJ Sammy record, Heaven.
That was a great record, great cheesy record.
A banger.
But I think like I made it, and it made it very quickly, and it was great. I was trying to get a feeling across, and I didn't ever play it. And then I played it, and I was like, damn, I got exactly what I wanted. And I think like just being fortunate enough to DJ in a lot of situations, and you kind of know what's going to work and what's not going to work. And then sometimes you're just completely wrong. Like, and then there's a record that, like, I've got a record coming out in December called Techno Tree. It's a great record, but like, I didn't know it would get the response of what it gets. And I get DM'd about it for the last year, every fucking day. And you're just like, Jesus Christ. Like, I wrote these lyrics in this room nearly 3 years ago, and it's gone through lots of reiterations, and I've got Amara on the vocals now, and like, just had a journey, but eventually it gets there, and you just got to do what's right for the record, really. And it's not about, it's just what's right for the record.
Yeah, but sometimes you don't always know that either, right? I mean,
you never know until you know.
Right, yeah.
It sounds like a dickhead thing to say, but like, it's impossible to tell you, for me, like what that process is, because it goes back to luck.
Yeah.
It's like, you might play it in a club and it will do really well, and then you might play it in another club and it won't do really well. Fine. But like, there's so many factors in that situation that will kind of make a record do well and won't do well. What did you play before? Like, how are you responding to the crowd? What happened in the crowd? Like, what time of night it is? So like, realistically, it's like luck.
Yeah.
You might come up with a sample that does really well. You might come up with a song that does really well. You might come up with a hook line that works really well, or you might not.
Yeah, and I think maybe the if there's a lesson to take out of all of that too, especially for like up and coming people, that sort of thing, is like, as much as possible, push back on that sense of urgency, push back on like that sort of false sense of like, this has to happen now. I finally made a record I like. Let's just get it out there. It all has to happen now. Because I think the longer you wait, the longer you take that time to evaluate and reevaluate and sit with a record. I think that's some of the most valuable stuff you can give yourself.
The biggest thing for me now that I've learned over the years is would I play this? Would I be happy with this music? Not necessarily play it, but would I want to listen to this music in 10 years' time?
That's a good one.
If the answer is yes, then it's probably going to get released, or it might get released, or I'm definitely going to play it. If the answer is no, then it gets binned. And I think I wish I did that earlier on in my career.
That's good, man. And again, that's a perspective thing. I think, earlier on, you wouldn't have even known how to think about 10 years from now. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
There's so much more I could ask you, but I do want to kind of start working towards an end point. One thing I wanted to do very quickly, just because I think you and I are some of the only two people who could have this conversation, is just our podcasts have shared several guests.
Oh, have they?
And yeah. And I wanted to just very briefly go over a couple names and just talk about what it was like talking to them, what you think of them,
cool.
Just because we're maybe some of the only people who have actually done podcasts with these people.
Okay.
First one is one of my favorites, my favorite episodes on mine is Gordo, formerly known as Carnage.
Yeah.
What was it like when you had him on? How do you know him? How did you meet him? What was it like?
I know him. He used to play, or he played some of my records. So we kind of, I don't think I've met him in person.
Oh, okay.
It's all been online interactions. But yeah, he's a lovely guy. He also works so hard. And he's very driven.
Extremely driven.
The podcast, he loves to talk, and which is always nice when you are doing a podcast and the guest is great at talking. So he was great. Yeah, loved it.
Yeah, he's fantastic, man. When I went to his place in Vegas, he's got a beautiful house out there, or at least he did. This was pre-pandemic. Yeah. And just sitting there on a beautiful sunny afternoon, he was laying on the couch, and he went long. He does love to talk, but it's so great because at certain points, we were just having pleasant conversation, but he gets so animated and he gets so into what you're talking about. There's certain points where he's just yelling into the mic about it was the best fucking, it makes me smile to go back and listen to it. Next up, Anna Luno.
She's great. I spoke to her just after the pandemic. She's a lovely, lovely woman. And it amazed me how she does her traveling from Australia back and forth, and then with her kids and everything like that. It's truly amazing.
Isn't that wild? And how much talk about another person who works so hard. It blows me away how many things she's doing at any given time. Yeah. It's one of those and to still manage to be so lovely to everybody, and to be I think of her as an inspirational figure more than some too, where you can tell
because she does so many other things as well. It's it's kind of that where there's it's very three-dimensional as a person rather than one-dimensional.
And you can tell she's doing it for the right reasons,
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, this was one I wanted to talk about because I think his episode on my podcast didn't get the love it should have, mainly because I'm in the US, but Mr. Jam.
He's a lovely guy. Really, really good. And I really like that conversation. He is very insightful into music and has done a lot for music, especially in the UK. He's great.
What did you guys talk about?
Mate, that was so long ago. He actually, we spoke a lot about radio and how important radio is in the UK. And just his career of how he kind of got to where he got to.
What was your radio show that you mentioned briefly before?
It was called The Barber Shop.
And what was it on?
It was SoundCloud and stuff, but then also it was synced to a load of other radio stations as well.
Got it.
I just don't like doing mixes, pre-recorded mixes. I hate doing them.
Oh, interesting.
So I did an interview section in the radio show, and that was the bit that I enjoyed the most, which was okay, I should probably just do the interview bit, the podcast,
right?
Which then turned into the podcast. Really.
Oh, that's cool, man. Yeah, I had a Sirius XM show for a couple of years that was the same,
cool.
mix show and then interview portion. And
I didn't know that.
Yeah, it was fun, man. But it's a fucking grind. Especially, was yours weekly, like making a mix every week?
No. Fuck that.
Well, that's what I did, and it was quite a lot.
Yeah, and it's for me, I just got to a point where I just chuck any record in. And I was just like, fucking just, and it's just like, that's not what I'm not, I don't want to do anything in this industry that makes me feel like I don't want to do it.
Yeah.
It's not why I do what I do.
What do you, okay, I'll wrap it up this way. I ask this question a lot. What's the most fun part of what you do? In general, what's like the part that makes you the most excited, the part that keeps you here, the part that you're always stoked to do of your whole deal?
There's multiple things that for me equally amount to my whole career that makes my whole career fun. Writing a record that I absolutely love is that will never, like, there's no other feeling, no other human being, like no relationship, no sex, no drink, no drug, nothing will ever be able to like take that feeling away of like that initial, sorry, there's fucking fly flying around.
No worries.
Will ever take that away, that initial feeling of like, oh wow, I've written this insane record. And when you play that for the first time and it goes off, that's insane. When you play an amazing show, like majority, not every show is great. Like a lot of shows are good. Like even if there's 20,000 people in front of you, the show can still be very average.
Absolutely.
So I think there's a difference between playing like when was the last show that was like insane for me? I played EDC Orlando, which was amazing, but I played Dallas not so long ago. And like Dallas has always been good for me, but like this was on another level of fun.
What venue do you remember?
At It'll Do.
Oh yeah, I know that spot, yeah.
Which I always play there and it's always great. But this night was just extra special. And whether, you never know, do you? There's so many factors. The crowd are on point. I'm on point. I'm in a good mood. I had whatever, like I'm feeling good and I played well. And they responded, luckily. But like playing an amazing show like that is just something super special. Those two things. And then also when you see, when people respond to you and tell you about the music, that they enjoy the music, like that's really interesting to me. That's not what is, that's not really like,
it's not why you do it.
It's not why I do it, but like the first two things are like the one where it's like, can't match it.
Well, and you just made me realize with the playing a good show thing too, I think part of the fun for me that I just put together is the potential of it.
Yeah.
Because every time you show up to a city, to a venue, it could be that amazing show.
Yeah.
And you never know until you're right there doing it. For me, part of the fun is like that anticipation too. Yeah. That never gets old.
Yeah, you're right. You're right. And sometimes you go to a club and you just know it's going to be a shit party and it just changes and it's not. And you're like, what? Was not expecting that.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, you're disappointed plenty, but even that, it doesn't make the time after that any less exciting, you know?
Yeah, for sure. So, like to be fair, like I try and enjoy everything. There's certain things that I don't enjoy, like editing the podcast. Right. But there's like even travel, I try not to stress about travel. I know a lot of my friends that tour, they hate the travel. And I've tried to enjoy the travel and try to like make the most of the travel as much as it can be a fucking nightmare. Like it's actually pretty easy. All I need to do is sit down on a plane or get on the plane. And if the plane goes before I get there, then it goes before I get there and I get on another plane. Right. It's really first world problems. But realistically, we get paid to train, to travel.
Yeah, absolutely, man.
And although, yes, we sell tickets and stuff like that, but realistically, like if you split down all the hours of traveling, then that's where the money kind of is, our time. Because when we're traveling, yes, you can work to a certain level, but there's not many people that write amazing records whilst they're traveling. There's not many people that can be that productive whilst you're traveling. So it's taking up a lot of your time. We do a lot of time of trying to be productive when we're in an environment that's not a productive environment.
Yeah, that's true, man.
And the toll on your body, like people, like the travel does put a toll on your body, and it does take years off your life. Oh yeah, definitely. Maybe being on a plane 3, 4, 5 times a week is not healthy for you.
Should have stuck to rugby, man. Should have stuck to rugby.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, it's also the routines, and there's a lot of things that you do to do this career that a lot of forfeits you take. But it's worth it.
Okay, so to end period on the end of the sentence, the flip side of that, because I think you dropped a lot of gems in this conversation, man. I really like this, and I think you have a very good head on your shoulders for all this. So what holds you back? What is something you're still working on?
What holds me back? It's a really good question. The question that the answer that I really want to say is myself. Sure. Because I can't blame anything. There's nobody else I can blame that holds me back.
Yeah.
If I thought my manager held me back, I should just go get a new manager. If I thought my agent held me back, I should just go get a new agent. I don't think anything holds me back. I think potentially pushing myself out of the comfort zone, and then also explaining, because I have a team around me. So I have to be able to tell my vision to my team. And sometimes it doesn't, like being able to talk about that. It does. It's impossible to tell somebody exactly what's going on in my head, and where I see this record. And music is so based on personal opinion. I could send a record to my manager and I absolutely love it, and he hates it. And then how does that? I'm like, dude, this record's still coming out. But then if he hates it, and I'm just making this example up.
No, of course.
If he really did, in fact, it's actually happened. Like, he didn't hate one of my records called New Generation. He didn't hate it. He didn't dislike it. But he was like, I'm not a huge fan of this record. He's like, I don't think it's going to do very well. He's not a huge fan. But the thing is that's the hard thing, is when you're going into a situation, one person in your team isn't fully on board and I'm fully on board, or somebody else is fully on board and I'm not on board. It's like, how can you, there's compromise, but how can you also make sure that everyone's working to the top of their game to try and do that when they're not actually that interested in that record or interested in that show or things like that. So I think for me, it's like, actually the thing that I struggle with the most is like maybe communicating my vision in the correct way. But I think I've got better at that. Also, what holds me back? It's just myself, man.
Yeah. That's true for all of us, right? It's
just, for me, it's like, yeah, it's just myself. But I also don't think I hold myself back to a certain extent. I'm really trying to rack my brains. Like, I'm open to do whatever I need to do to make this work.
Yeah.
And whether that's rewrite a whole record, or whether that's start a whole new record, or whether that's do this show or do that show, or not do this show or not do that show, or talk to this person. Like, I will literally do what the fuck I need to do to get to where I want to get to.
Well, I think that's the lesson I just took out of what you said, is like, you got to always be open to being wrong, or to realizing that you're not seeing the whole picture, or any of that. Like, you can't we get so married to our idea of our own project, the project in our head, that maybe you can't always communicate fully.
Yeah.
But, that project doesn't exist in a vacuum. And so you got to be
ego.
Yeah. Oh,
it's
yeah,
ego
absolutely.
for me. Like I still have an ego. We all have an ego. But I think for me, that's the one thing. And ego and comparison held me back for years. Comparison literally choked my career for a long time.
How'd you get out of it?
I just had to realize that it's just not healthy.
Yeah.
It was multiple things. 2018 was like a turning point for my career where I was really unhappy with my team. I was unhappy with the music I was putting out or the labels I was being associated with. I was unhappy with the fees that I was getting. I was unhappy with where everything was going. And I try and fix that with materialistic things. And I try and fix it with the other things. And it just, for me, it was just like, I just need to look at myself and reevaluate everything. And I need to make changes. And that's the thing that I took out of it is for something, you can be doing the same thing every single day for years and years and years, and it never does anything.
Yeah.
So what do you have to do? You have to make a fucking change.
Yeah, man.
If you, I don't know what an analogy is, but you have to fucking make change and you have to evaluate and this is a business. You have to make money unless you're just doing it as a hobby. And if you're doing it as a hobby, great, do what the fuck you want every day. Make the same acid line all you want. Do whatever you want to do, but you're never going to change. And for me, the whole point of life is change. It's change. It's how can you do something different? And how can you do something different that nobody else has done? Or how do you make something differently? Or how do you treat somebody differently? Or what can you do that's different to affect your life so then your life affects others in the most positive way? For me, around me is if I'm successful, my manager's successful, my agent's successful, my family will have... I can do nice things with my family. Not all financially, right, but my family will be better off. My friends will be better off. Everybody around me, if I'm successful mentally and financially and career-wise, everything around me will be better.
Yeah, man.
So why... that is purely the whole goal for my career. And that's changed over the years. That's massively changed. But as I've kind of dropped the comparison, dropped a bit of the ego, it's turned more about how can I affect my surroundings and everybody around me. I don't think people really necessarily I don't realize I don't think my manager realizes how much I want to succeed for him.
Right.
I will say it to him, but I don't think he realizes how much that is why I'm doing what I'm doing.
Yeah, dude, I relate to that. I know exactly what you mean. And it's you also just brought it full circle because we started off this whole talking about the fact that you got to take care of yourself before you can take care of others. And I think now we've kind of arrived at actually taking care of yourself does take care of other people around you. Just the 100%. Act of it. Yeah.
100%, man.
That's beautiful, man. I don't think we got to go any deeper than that.
Wrap this fucker up.
Anything else on your mind or you want to get out there before we log off? Anything you want to let people know?
No, go check my music out. Go listen. Thank you. Go listen to my podcast if you like music podcasts.
Yeah.
Yeah, thanks for listening. I really appreciate it.
Dude, this was great, man. I'm a big fan of your music. I love your podcast, all that. So I'm glad we got to connect on this one.
Thanks for having me, man. It's been really good.
Yeah.
Really good. Thank you.
Fantastic, man. Thank you.
Cheers, dude.
Yeah.
Have a great one.
Take care, man.
Peace.
Bye.
Bye.